The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Alice Ann Bailey. I'm with the Southern Regional Education Board, SREB, and I direct the Go Alliance program at SREB. Go Alliance is a post-secondary access and success program geared towards helping low-income, first in the family, students of color graduate from high school and go on to some form of education after high school and successfully complete a credential. And obviously, a part of that, what I call everyone is, you're the rock in this whole process, school counselor. So I call myself a school counselor groupie. I am not a school counselor, but I, want to be one, and I love you all and follow you everywhere and want to learn as much as you will teach me. So I appreciate everyone who has so generously shared their school counseling expertise with me over the years. Just a few things to let you know about today. There is a question box where you can type your questions. I see already somebody says, has the audio started yet? Yes, the audio has started. She probably cannot hear. Let me write that. So that means if you, there might be some people who are just logging on right now and having some technical difficulties making sure they're going to be with us. Maria Grosvenor has already asked, with the Atlanta Public Schools, will there be a handout available? We are going to make the slides available, and we are going to make the recording available. I can also make the questions and answers available to you as well as more, and we can send that out as like an FAQ for those of you who want to see that. Also, I want you to know that because of the demand for this webinar, we will be repeating it next week in partnership with Common App, where Reach Higher is housed. If you remember Michelle Obama's Reach Higher program, we're going to be partnering with them to repeat this webinar next week. Brian has so graciously agreed to share his time and expertise with us yet once again. Next week, we're going to be joined by Laura Ross, who is the ASCA School Counselor of the Year for 2020, and she's a middle school counselor. And Christina Welch, who is the North Carolina School Counselor of the Year for 2014 and an ASCA semi-finalist. And in a K-8 school, so we'll have a perspective of what is going on at all for school counseling at all levels. So yes, to answer your questions, the PowerPoint will be available afterwards. A recording of today's session will be available afterwards, and a printout of the questions as well. And we'll try to type up some answers and give that back to you as like an FAQ. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who I'm sure needs absolutely no introduction to any of you. Brian is a school counselor with Chicago Public Schools. He began as an actor and found that he really had a passion for helping students and shifted into school counseling, and we're all so glad that he did. Within 6 short years, he was named the ASCA National Counselor of the Year and has achieved a lot of incredible things in his short tenure, such as working with LGBTQ youth, helping to promote social emotional skills within his school, and we could go on, but I don't think Brian really needs an introduction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Shucks, thank you so much. All right, folks, so I think for today, this really came together after I posted a series of points on Twitter about how my team is approaching closure, and I'm going to share a little bit about that with you today, but I think what's going to be far more helpful is to keep it as macro level as I can to support all of you in all of your different schools at all of your different levels. So with that, I will begin. You will hear me bouncing it back to Alice to move through the different slides as she is controlling my slides remotely. All right, you can see an overview. I'm going to give you some disclaimers, things to keep in mind. I think many of you are asking where to begin, where do I start? So I'll give you some information on that. We'll talk about the different domains of support, academic, social emotional, college and career, some action steps that you can take. Then, I think what's so incredibly important, talking about how you can take care of yourselves in addition to supporting your communities. I've pulled together some resources that me and my team have been using over the last week, and then we'll have time for Q&A. All right, Alice.
Sorry.
Great. So some disclaimers, the limits of universality. As I said before, I'm going to be talking about what we're doing specifically in my high school. That is very specific to my school, my team, even my school within my district within my state, etc. I imagine that all of you are in a similar situation. So just making sure that we understand, I'm giving you what works for us right now as we work this out day by day. Always keep in mind your policies, your school policies, your district's policies, and the legal aspect of what you are doing. I know that there's a webinar coming up next week about ethics from ASCA. Just keep in mind that you need to be taking into account all of these different layers of guidelines, policy, and legislation. What I'll be talking to you today about is strictly a short-term sort of support strategy. When we first got out of school here in Chicago Public Schools, our last day of school was on Monday of this week. In the last few days, we found out instead of going back at the end of March, we're now looking at going back April 21st, right? So things continue to change quickly. And what I'll be talking to you about is specifically short-term strategy that will need to be revisited as we continue to look at how the weeks will develop. And then questions over answers. As any counselor will likely say, we don't give our students answers. We don't tell them what we do. We try to give them tools and resources and give them questions to spur their own thinking. That's really what I'm doing with you today, thinking through a decision-making model, some questions. What do you need to be asking yourself as a counselor, as a team, as a school, in order to support your communities? Next slide. Customize, customize, customize. And you'll see I use a lot of Bitmoji and I have this whole unicorn thing. I apologize. I'm not going to apologize. I love my unicorn bit. But know that I'm all about taking what I share with you today and making it make sense for you. I'm going to try to keep it as broad as I can, take what makes sense to you, and then personalize that, customize that for your school communities. All right, where to begin? Okay, what are your policies? What are your school policies? What are the laws that are going to inform how you engage with students? What are the ethical implications for how we will engage in this work over the period of closure? A lot of this, so please stay tuned for more information from our governing bodies, from ASCA, on those fronts. I want to be clear, though, that what I'm giving you today is just what's been working for me and my school community specifically. I want you thinking about expectations. What do your administrators, what do your school communities expect from you at this stage? Are there any guidelines that have been passed down from your district? What is your state saying at this stage? And I hope that whatever plan you put together will be informed by that information. Who are your key stakeholders at this stage? Who are your internal stakeholders and supports that will help you make a plan? And then who are your target audience members? We'll be talking about that in a little bit. Technology. Technology is obviously a very significant theme at this stage. And how are we thinking about the technology that we have access to, as well as the technology that our target audience of support have as well? Communication. Again, how are you communicating? What are you saying? How are you streamlining this communication to make sure you're not crossing wires with your school community? Specifically, what are the needs within your community? And then let's talk about how that will inform the work you're doing during this period of closure. Next slide. Cool. All right, so again, I use a question format, things I want you thinking about currently at the national level, at the local levels, and are they consistent? I know that My team was sort of working on a plan of support. Like our governor came out last Friday and said that the schools would be closing. So I was working on a plan with my team over the weekend so that by our last day of school, we had something. And then a series of guidelines have been coming out from the district and from our district counseling team. So you have to everything is changing so quickly, but I hope that you are reviewing the information that has been provided to you and allowing that to inform what you're doing. How do your ethical and legal obligations inform your remote work strategy? A lot of people are talking about, well, what does it mean to counsel from afar, especially if that's not what you do full time? Can I provide direct services? What does that look like? What are the HIPAA implications? There are a lot of different pieces. That's why I know for myself, I will be on that ASCA webinar next week just to learn a little bit more about the ethical implications for what we're doing at this stage. And what support resources are available to clear up any confusion that I may have. So, for example, I've been in touch with a lot of different people in my district. I've been in touch with my team. I've been in touch with my principal. I've been in touch with my union. We have a union here in Chicago Public Schools just to really talk about how can we better understand what the expectations are. I think as many of us know at this stage, a lot of the guidelines being put out are about the primary function of education and e-learning and what are students receiving at this stage, and the counseling support, the support services may not be getting as much attention at this stage. So again, some of this you might have to be putting together for yourself and advocating within your district as a counselor leader, but make sure you're consulting with the appropriate support providers. Next slide. So expectations, as I said before, what does your administration expect from you? What do they expect you to do? I know in some states and some districts, the counselors aren't expected to work at all, okay? That doesn't mean you still can't put out at least a communication to your students and families about what they can expect or any support resources that are available to them in the community. Based on how you understand your own counseling identity, what do you expect of yourself and your team? I mean, I will say I'm a counseling department chair for a team of 6 counselors. So I had to ask myself, well, what makes sense to me at this age? To be honest, it did not make sense to me immediately to go into, okay, I'm going to be directly in touch with my students one-on-one in some capacity during this period of closure. There's a lot of moving parts on that front. I had to think about our district communication policy, and I'm still sort of thinking about, well, how's that going to make sense? I took some of the core components of our counseling program, looked at some of the more transactional elements that I knew students could work on quickly from afar, and that bought us a little bit of time as we think about these larger strategies when it comes to direct service. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on a slide in a bit. To what extent will you be available during the period of closure? I think that's a big piece. I know for my counseling team, we said we would be available roughly between 9 and 2 each day, partially to provide a level of structure to our day, but partially also to make it clear to our community when they can access us and how they can follow up with us electronically. Next slide. Who are your key stakeholders at this stage? Who do you need to be collaborating with? I know in my school community, I'm in contact with our case manager. I'm in contact with our administration. I've been in contact with our social work support. I've been in contact with my counseling team almost on a daily basis at this stage. And that list is growing, right? So who do you need to be in touch with in order to come up with a plan? I think it's very important that counselors not work in isolation. So who are your people? Who are your squad, your crew that will help you support your students and your community during this time? Now that I have a sort of plan, a series of plans with our support providers in my school, the next layer for me is really engaging with our teachers. What communication am I going to put out to our teaching community at my school as a whole, letting them know specifically what counseling is working on at this stage and how we can continue to partner remotely? All things I want you thinking about. And who are your target audiences of support? I mean, I think it can be obvious that one of the target audiences is our students for sure, but what about our parent guardian population? Is your teacher population one of your target audiences? What information are you going to provide to them to help them support students, or at least redirect students for you redirect students to you, excuse me, as appropriate? But just making sure you know who your key support players are and the stakeholders that you'll be partnering with. Next slide. Technology. Okay, what do you have access to? I'll be fully transparent. Even setting up this meeting this morning, I have a district school issued Chromebook. I've got my laptop. Neither of these pieces were necessarily working in order to make this meeting happen today. I'm on my phone, right? A lot of communication and technology issues can happen relatively quickly. Well, what are you working with? What are you willing to use? And more importantly, what is your district support? There's some apps, there's some programs and websites that my district doesn't necessarily support. So you need to be aware of what's appropriate for you and what you have clearance to use. We are, in my district, a Google district, so I have a lot that I can do through Google Classroom. You'll be hearing a little bit more from me about that in a bit, but I know that that is a huge part of my support strategy at this stage. And you have to go back to what works for you and what exists in your district, okay? And then based on what you're using, what are the legal and ethical implications of that? That again just goes back to HIPAA and how is information being shared, and can you be sure that if you are providing some level of direct service to students, that information will be maintained and confidential, okay? Communication. What information do you need to share with your key stakeholders at this stage? So as of Sunday, this week, I was reaching out to my principal and laying out, well, here's a counseling plan and some things that I want you thinking about. What do you think is appropriate? Then by Monday, I was meeting with my team and coming up with a communication strategy. What are we saying to our students? What are we saying to our parents and guardians? What do they need to know immediately, just to have a sense of how we will be supporting them short term as we figure this situation out? What communication obstacles might exist? For example, I have about a quarter of our students in my school, English is not the first language spoken at home. So in what way can we take our information and put it in Spanish or Polish, etc.? How are we going to make that happen? Do we have a short-term strategy? Do we have a long-term strategy? Those are things that I'm thinking about. I work in a district that is overwhelmingly low income. Many students don't have technology access at home or consistent technology access. That was a conversation with my school. We luckily have Chromebooks available for students to check out if they need during this period of closure. But again, what are the obstacles that are unique to your community, and how are you going to work with your stakeholders, your support players to overcome those? And which ones can you overcome and which ones can you not? But being very clear and consistent and intentional about that plan. And how will you communicate with your target audience of support? Again, I spoke to that. And again, I'm always going to come back to the legal ethical implications. I'm going to continue to say, like, if you haven't signed up, I believe the ASCA webinar on Monday may be already full, but make sure that you're getting that information and continue to think about the legal and ethical implications of your plan at this stage. Next slide. And I apologize if I'm talking fast. It's kind of my way. I will work to talk a bit slower as I continue. I think it's so incredibly important that we are thinking about the needs of our community. What specifically is going on in your community? What do you know that they need at this stage? If there are issues, for example, I mean, how are you approaching if there's a food need or a supply need in your community? How are you partnering with local community partners, or how are you partnering with your school or with your district to make sure that you are supporting your students in ways, and your students and families in ways that are appropriate? When you're thinking about your different target audiences, well, how do their needs differ? Your students versus your parents and guardians versus potentially your teachers or district leadership or your administration, etc. And making sure you have a clear sense of what that means for you and your role as a counselor. How is data informing? What metrics are you using to assess the needs? I mean, I immediately went back to my school's needs assessment. What do we know about technology access at home? What do we know about language needs and supports at home? What do we know about socioeconomic status of our students? Like, how are you using the information already available to you to inform how you're going to support students during this period? And then I will get on my soapbox for a moment. Well, that's what my little Bitmoji says, at least. What issues of equity and inclusivity and access do you need to address in order to support your target audiences? This is so incredibly important. I mean, we're talking about distance support at this stage, and that is going to look so different based on your community, it could look different from student to student, school to school, counselor to counselor. There's so many different ways in which this is going to create a lot of obstacles for you and your community. So how are you going to be as equitable as possible? For example, something that we're working on in my school, we decided that course scheduling, which is already something we're up to at this stage in the year, that's going to be our primary project with our students, at least our freshmen and sophomores, since we already scheduled our juniors. That's what we're going to work on. Well, then we had some very serious conversations about, well, if we're going to do this remotely and we're going to have our students fill out Google surveys to let us know what they're requesting, well, we have to give them a deadline that is reasonable because they may not have consistent internet access on a daily basis. And we can't just prioritize the students that have the technology immediately. So how are we randomizing this in a way to make it equitable? How are we giving them enough time to find the resources if they don't have them at their disposal immediately? Things that I want you thinking about. And then once you've come up with a plan, you have a sense of the needs, ideally you're implementing some level of programming or at least communication. How do you continue to progress, monitor those needs over the period of closure? How are you getting feedback? Is there a way in which you can check in, maybe through some sort of survey or needs assessment, or with your teachers or with your administrators? What are they hearing? How are you continuing to collect data and intel on what's happening in the community around you, even if you are sequestered in your home during this time? Next slide. Counseling program goals. So let's think practically about what would you have been working on in your school community at this stage already? And what are the priorities? How can you potentially take what you were working on already and then translate that into some sort of distance support? As I said, right now, at least for us, course scheduling has been the thrust. Planning for the summer, enrichment, summer jobs, etc. That's been a lot for us, at least at the freshman, sophomore level. At the junior, senior level, we've been talking a lot about research, college research, financial aid research. Students are starting to get letters, their acceptance letters, their financial aid letters. We're doing a lot of analysis, critical analysis of that information. Again, I'm talking a lot about what happened at the high school level. I know that there may be folks on the call that are at the pre-K through 8 level, but what makes sense for you based on the programming that you had already designed for the year? And then based on the current events, well, how do the current events impact what you're working on? Do you need to revise what you're working on right now? Are there workarounds that exist for you? And then what tools and resources, that again comes back to that technology and maybe some of the support that you may need to take your program, revise it on the fly, and implement it with fidelity and intention at this stage. Okay, next slide. Domains of support. So really at this stage, I'm just going to go through, I've highlighted some of the things that can be done that immediately came to me in terms of things that could be potentially done at a distance. Right now, we're working on a transcript and credit review. Again, I'm sure counselors are already doing that on a regular basis. Now that we have that time and flexibility potentially from home, making sure we're looking at that information. Course scheduling, as I mentioned, is something that is the primary focus for my team right now. And when I talk about enrichment and e-learning, what I'm talking about specifically is, well, what work are students receiving? I think that's something that I'm still partnering with my school team to figure out, as we all are trying to figure out around the country. Well, what does the work look like for now? How are we maintaining rigorous academic expectations, also while not, at least in my district, in my area, and I think as it's been communicated to us all, not grading this work for now? Because at least in my district, these are act of God days, right? These are days that are not going to be made up. This is not formal, traditional, and these aren't traditional instructional minutes. So what work is being assigned? What expectations exist? I think as a counselor in the community, it's important that you're aware so you can help triage as students reach out for support or parents and guardians have questions, and you can connect the students and families with their teachers in a meaningful way. The tertiary skill development, or I'm sure in some capacity you work with your students on time management and study strategies and learning styles, etc. The same tools can be used remotely. How are you providing that information and what resources do you have? I've also mentioned e-credit recovery and acceleration. I know that I work in a district and school where we have our e-learning partners that already provide online coursework for our students under certain circumstances to make up classes that they may have failed already or to accelerate in course areas of interest. Is that's something available to you in your community? Again, you know better than I would. So just being very clear on what exists and what options might already exist for you. And I know that many, not many, but some districts already have a pretty formal, structured e-learning series of programs or guidelines, etc. You might have a, you not might, you have a leg up when it comes to distance support. So make sure you're just aware of the resources and tools available to you in your district. I can't believe it. So this is what happens when you create PowerPoints in the middle of the night. So I definitely put course schedulings twice because I mean, that's what I'm thinking about all day, every day at this moment. I apologize. Next slide. All right, personal social support. The biggest thing I hope that everyone is thinking about right now is the crisis triage. That was one of the first questions I had from my administration was, if and when I become aware of some issue for a student that they're in danger, there's a safety issue or concern, how are we going to triage this? Because as of right now, I am not in direct contact outside of my email with my students. So how is this going to work? I mean, luckily we have administrators on staff right now, at least one administrator at all times. I'm making sure that all of our administrators are looped in if and when I'm aware of an issue or concern or potential crisis. But again, making sure you're talking to the core stakeholders in your community, maybe your social worker or your psychologist, your administration. What is the plan and how are you going to continue to triage crisis situations as they come up? This is a great time for consultation. If there are community partners, outside therapists, individuals working with your students that you can partner with to come up with strategies to support students that you already know and are aware have some significant issues. I've already been a part of a series of conversations this week for some of my students that are transitioning in and out of hospitalization and working with those community-based partners to come up with a strategy as we all grapple with what it means to do our work during this period of closure. Skill development. I know skill development looks different at different grade levels. I know a lot of my elementary school, middle school partners are much more focus maybe at this stage of the year around specific skill development, relationship building, communication, coping skills, etc. Well, what programs can you use? What programs do you have access to? You can potentially walk students through that information since you are not there with them in person. I know that some communities are already looking at options for virtual groups, etc. We aren't there yet as a school community. I don't know if my school will be able to pull that off at this stage. But again, you know better what will work and what makes sense for you. Self-care. Self-care is something that, at least in my school, we talk to our students about at every grade level. We break it down into the physical domain of self-care, the psychological, emotional domains of self-care, the spiritual domain. Like, what are students doing intentionally? What behaviors are they intentionally using, accessing to help support them during this period of upheaval and confusion, and being intentional with them in ways that they can reflect on their own self-care. And then individual student planning, I think that's where we're going to need the most support and guidance and as we move forward is how does it make sense to support students from afar. I know there's, I highlighted what's happening with ASCA. I know that they're on Twitter. I don't know if everybody's about that Twitter life. I've only in the last year become about that Twitter life myself. There's so many resources available on Twitter and so many amazing, brilliant people sharing so many different resources. But I know that there will be a Twitter SC chat next Wednesday to talk about how to support students from afar from specialists and experts, counselors who do this work consistently on a regular basis. So stay tuned for more information on that front. College and career. There's so many different things. I mean, research is a big theme right now. What career interests, I mean, I know that at least in my district, in my school, we use Naviance as a primary tool of support. Students can be doing their career interest profile. There's so many different ways of accessing and reviewing their interests. They can be reviewing videos of individuals in different fields of interest. They can be looking at financial aid. What are financial aid options for students? Our seniors can still be applying for financial aid at this stage. And our juniors, I know at my school, we have an expectation homework for them that by roughly the middle of May, they will have started finalizing the colleges that they're thinking about applying to based on our criteria for our 5 first choice schools, etc. But there are a lot of different research pieces that don't require a direct oversight necessarily from the counselor at this stage that students can be doing to move some of these thoughts and issues around their post-secondary plan forward. Mock job enrichment interviews. I love a good mock interview. I love doing that and providing that support to my students. That's something they can do at home, potentially with their peers, or they can do it by phone. They can do it with their parents, guardians, etc. But that's something that can keep them engaged in the college career domain. Summer program and enrichment research and application. It's a little tricky right now. It's going to be touch and go how summer programs and jobs, et cetera, look for us around the country. But again, they can be looking into what options exist and what their first plan or their second plan, their A, B, C, D plans might be at this stage. Resume building. I know we use Naviance again to help students craft their resume, and that's something that counselors can review from afar and provide feedback on. And then self-assessments and letters of recommendation. We, for example, at my school have a survey that we have students do, junior students do by the end of the year to give us a sense of what they're up to and how they've experienced their time in high school. It really just helps us craft our letters of recommendation. So we're putting out that information. I know after I get off this call, I'll be creating a video on my iPhone explaining the self-assessment and posting it on Google Classroom for my juniors today, just to give them a sense of something that they can be working on over at least the next month, if not the next few months, depending on what happens. Next slide. So coming back, action steps. What are things you can do? Review your pertinent federal, state, district guidelines. Identify and revise your core program objectives. That's your counseling program objectives. What do you want students to be doing anyway at this stage, and how can you translate that into distance programming? Consult with your key stakeholders on goals and expectations. I'm sure at this point my counseling team is sick of me. We're in text correspondence every day. We have done Google Meet meetings almost every day. I've FaceTimed with multiple counselors at this stage, but how are you in touch? Zoom is also a great resource. How are you in touch with your core stakeholders? And then what's your communication plan? I know that it was very important for me to work, since I have a team of counselors working with me. Well, wait, what are we saying at each grade level? Are we going to send out one message at each grade level? What information can we send out from the grade level? What information can we say individually as counselors working with our own caseloads? And how are we making sure that our communication is as streamlined and consistent as possible? I think that consistency in messaging is so incredibly important, and making sure you're on the same page with your partners in the communication. That's really, really important to me. And then implementing distance counseling program. All right, now that you've consulted, you've collaborated, you've engaged, you've strategized, what are you doing? Get it out there, right? And then progress monitor what is or is not working as you can remotely as we move forward. Those are the next action steps that I think everybody can at least brainstorm as we move forward. Next slide. Wait, what about you? Okay, next slide. I think that's so important because we are helping professionals. I know that for many of us, this is a period of increased anxiety. I know myself, I am an anxious mess. I'm an anxious mess on a regular basis, to be honest, but especially under the circumstances. So how are you taking care of yourselves is so incredibly important. And I think it's so incredibly important, especially for the purpose of modeling for our students, that if we can do that work and if we are being intentional around our self-care, they can too. Right? How are you engaging in your physical wellness, your emotional, psychological wellness, your spiritual wellness? Do you have any sort of structure to your days? I'll be transparent. I get up roughly around 7:30. Thank goodness for Disney Plus. I watch me a good Disney. I've been watching a lot of my favorite cartoons from childhood. I've been watching X-Men the last few days before I start my formal work day at 9 o'clock. I make sure that I'm showered and dressed before I start working from my kitchen table at 9 o'clock. I'm in my email. I'm consulting and collaborating with my key stakeholders, right? I take lunch. I FaceTime with one of my loved ones during lunch. I continue working in the afternoon, right? I make sure that I have a rotating schedule for my loved ones that I will be in touch with. I mean, again, I do have the privilege and bias of living alone. I can do things like that. If you have a lot of people at home, or if you have children, I am rooting for you and empathizing with you from afar. But under the circumstances, I just think it's so incredibly important that you're putting some intention around the structure of your day, and making sure that we are modeling that for our students and giving them that potential to a resource as well. Again, modeling is key, and lead with intention. whether you're going to be in your jammies all day and be on the couch watching cartoons, or whether you're going to be in your email or on Google Meet or engaging directly with your students or creating videos, whatever you plan to do, just make sure that you're doing it in an intentional way that is supporting you and helping you support your students and your community. Next slide. Resources. All right, I was hustling as quickly as I could to come up with some of the resources that I know I've been using right now. The Calm app is so lovely. Castle has so many social emotional resources. I linked to Psychology Today with a lot of, we took what is present on the Psychology Today website and made a hotlines list for our students and families. It's a little difficult. Many of our community partners that we would otherwise sort of refer our students and communities to, many of them are closed right now as well. So we really moved to hotlines and what remote support already exists for students. I linked to ASCA's information on COVID-19. They had so many wonderful resources on ways in which coping and stress and how to support or strategize support for districts during this time, the legal information that counselors might need to be aware of, etc. A lot of great resources available from ASCA. And I know that webinar, that ethics webinar, as well as many pop-up webinars are coming up next week and beyond. Naviance, again, is a tool that we use in my school. Almost everything under college and career links to that organization's COVID resources. But I will say, with College Board and Naviance, not only can you get information on how these organizations are dealing with COVID-19, but you can also use the actual resources if they already are present in your district. Or College Board, I know, is a huge resource for our students right now around their college list and researching institutions, and even looking at the net price calculator available on the College Board website, etc. And then really understanding what's happening with the testing, standardized testing. I know College Board and ACT have put out different information and are continuing to strategize this. So those links will take you there. NACAC, in addition to having information on how they are dealing with COVID-19, they have a lot of great resources for schools and communities on how we can support students with e-resources and lessons going from kindergarten all the way up. So some great information available via NACAC. FastWeb is a great scholarship resource tool. I know in my district we have a curated tool called Academic Works, but again, that doesn't exist everywhere, so know what works and what exists for you in your community. Communication tools, Zoom is great, it's free right now. Google Meet, I don't know if you are a Google school or if you have access to Google in that way, but I know that's something that's become super helpful for me and my team, and will likely be a potential way in which we correspond with our students and families, depending on district policy and guidelines as we move forward. Khan Academy is a great free resource when it comes to test prep. I know that in my district, we have students create their Khan Academy accounts, and then we have them link their Khan Academy accounts to the College Board accounts, because we're a SAT district and community. So making sure, state really, and making sure that they have access to that information, because Khan Academy can give you personalized SAT prep once you link those accounts together. I linked to the CDC information. Again, there's so much information coming out from the CDC, just making sure you have that. And then when it comes to maybe broaching some of those issues of equity for our students, especially our students that may not have Wi-Fi or internet access remotely, Spectrum and Comcast are offering free Wi-Fi hotspots, etc., to families during this time. And I have some information there that links to what they are offering. Next slide. This is not exhaustive by any means. This is just what I've been working on. And then on this slide here, you see hashtag do the next right thing. All right, this is a bit cheesy, I will preface, but I'm a big fan of Frozen 2. All right, Frozen 2 has really been a very special movie to me in 2020. And there's a song in that movie called Do the Next Right Thing that Anna sings. It's a wonderful song about grief process, and we're essentially watching the characters sort of grapple with a lot of very difficult issues very quickly. And the salient point for me in that song was do the next right thing. You don't have to have the next week planned, or the next 2 weeks, or the next month, or the rest of the school year. But what can you do in your role, in your sphere of influence as a counselor, to support yourself, to support your students and your community? And it's just the next right thing, the next right step, one foot in front of the other. And I think that's a message that's really help me on the daily basis, and I thought it appropriate to share in this way with all of you, and I hope that helps in some way. Next slide. All right, I've covered as much as I could based on what has been working for me and my team, as well as just conversation starters or brainstorm starters for all of you as you look at the unique needs and tools and resources and guidelines in your school communities. With that, I will take questions as Alice shares, and we'll move forward from there. Thank you for your energy and attention, and I hope that you all are taking a moment to breathe, to thank yourselves for continuing to commit to your work in a period of a lot of confusion and uncertainty. We are called to do something so incredibly special for our students and our school communities, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share in this way, and I hope that I've helped, and I hope that you will pay it forward and continue to help me and help each other as we work together to troubleshoot how we're going to support our students during this period of closure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was so comprehensive and well thought out. I love how, you have to start, instead of just jumping in, really think strategically about your district's goals and your school goals and the legal and ethical environment that you have to work in, and thinking about, access issues that your students have before you just dive in with solutions. So that was fabulous. First question is, going back to this slide, if I can. Oh, well, there was a question about your, this one, the resources that you're using. Let me see, I'm gonna have to do this. Anyway, let's see. Okay, here it is. Sorry. But anyway, about the resources that you are using, can you share this with, we hate to ask you to have, spend any more time on this, but there's a question about whether you could provide a little more information about the specific things within each one of these that you're using with some links.
Sure. Yeah, that was a goal for today. I was not able to pull that off before our presentation today, but yes, I can. So for examples, and you can tell me whether or not this is helpful, but for example, I am prepared to share the out of office message that I'm currently using. I can share the hotlines list that we curated at my school. I don't know how helpful it is. I can give you a look at the language in our Google form. Again, this language is very specific to the courses that exist and the graduation requirements in my district, but I'm happy to share that. I can give you a look at, I can probably put together a little step-by-step on how to do videos. I had to talk to my team about this week because my team wasn't necessarily familiar on the process of, if you're going to film a video on your phone, well, how do you take that video and then somehow get it to your students? I think we're lucky because we have Google Classroom that we can, like, I take a video in my phone, I put that video in iPhone, edit it a little bit, or excuse me, in iMovie. I move that, take that video, then put it in my Google Drive. From my Google Drive, I add it to my Google Classroom. I mean, those are options that are available. I want to respect that this is going to require a lot of customization at your level, at your school, and in your community. But yes, I'm happy to share some of this information, and I'll work on getting that out or adding that slide with some links before Alice shares this on the SREB website.
I am so sorry to put more on your plate, but if you have time, that would be greatly appreciated.
I'll work on it for sure.
Yeah, all of that would be good. And then there was a question highly related to this, says, will you share your mock interview questions and template?
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to get all my good stuff, aren't you? Yeah, I can work on that.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Go ahead and type them in the question box, and we can pose them to Brian. The other thing I would say to everyone as you're typing in your questions is, if you have a unique solution of something that you are doing with your students that you would like to share with your colleagues, please feel free to do that as well. We would welcome that. One of the things that I'm going to be doing after this webinar is to follow up with all of you with some survey questions, because I want to get a handle on things that you're still struggling with even after this webinar, questions that you had that you might not have been able to think about at this time, things that you want to share with others. I want to be able to collate all of that information as we prepare for next week's webinar, so that we can kind of take this a step further for anyone who needs it as well. So look out for that email from me, and I hope you will not only answer it, but share it with your colleagues so they can answer it as well. We're really trying to get a handle on who is doing what and what things are you struggling with. All right, first question. Are you communicating with any of the elementary school counselors in your district to see what might be working for them or what they might need from you? Or are you just working with your high school team?
That's a great question. So for me, I guess it's important to understand for me in my district and my school community, the entire district serves as a feeder for my school specifically. So it's a little complicated to work directly with the individual elementary schools. I work at a selective enrollment public high school. So what I am relying on, right, we do have an office, a district office that has counseling support, district level support. So, and we do have individuals supporting high school level and elementary school level in that team, in that office. So I'm really relying on support from them directly on what is happening at the elementary school level. We are such a large district that it's very difficult to do that one-to-one in that way. But I know for me, I'm also a part of our, for example, the Chicago Teachers Union counseling Facebook group. I'm looking at what's being said there. I'm looking at what's being said in our union Facebook group. I'm trying to keep a pulse of what's happening, but that direct individual follow-up, at least at this stage with our elementary school, for me and my role right now, I'm not there yet. I'm hustling, but I'm not quite to that level as of yet.
Yeah, it only so many seconds in the day, right? Does
Right.
Zoom allow for face-to-face interactive online meetings with students?
That's a great question. I literally had that conversation with my counseling team yesterday. So, I mean, again, it really depends on your district policy around follow-up communication with students. And I mean, in many districts, we're just trying to figure that out. I think since we are a Google district, and we do have access to Google Meet, Google Hangouts, etc., I think that will likely be a tool that is used for follow-up. I think I'm holding off on that for now. Me and my team, as best we can, are holding off on that for now and trying to keep it to email for now as we get more clarity, guidance, and frankly, for me, as I follow up and get more information on some of the ethical implications of supporting students in that way, given that that's not the primary way that I support students. So yes, I believe that will take place. And I know that we have at least one tool in order to facilitate that in my district, but I'm still playing that piece by ear.
Yes, and I would say, just as a Zoom user, technology-wise, you can have a one-on-one meeting with a student over Zoom, or a meeting with 30, 40 students all at once over Zoom. So I just know that it does have the capability for that. So
the technology certainly exists. I think I would always funnel everything that you are thinking about. Make sure you're checking with your administration in your district about what platforms they will or won't support, or what they do or don't expect from you at this stage.
Absolutely. Can you describe, Brian, your plans for a crisis situation?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, I think right now, if I became aware of in my email one of my students who was in some sort of personal crisis, my immediate follow-up would be to our administration, because I know that we have at least one administrator at school, and I would triage with them, do you think it more appropriate for you to call from, you know, our school protected communication, our phones there. If I hide my phone number, do you want me to call from my phone? What are the ethical, legal obligations? What are the guidelines from our district on that front? And then how can we triage support? If it was an emergency and a true emergency, the obvious follow-up for me is 911 remotely, as I am connecting with my administration and my school team as well. If it's something that I could potentially support via non-emergency services, yeah, I might call non-emergency services in my area as well. It really sort of depends, but the primary point is, if something were to go down that required immediate support, I need to be able to follow up with administration. I need to be able to follow up with the students' parents and guardians based on the information that we have in our student management system. And if a true emergency, I need to be able to follow up. And this is, again, in consultation with my administration, with 911. What are our next steps going to be? How are we making sure that we are following district protocol as we do so?
Thank you. The next question is, what are you doing, if anything, to make your videos fun or interactive, or any e-learning activities to kind of put some fun into it for students? Do you have any recommendations on how to do that?
Sure. I mean, well, I'm fun, period. No, what I would say, my videos, I think, and you know yourself, you know your personality. I mean, I'm all about this unicorn philosophy that we all have unique strengths and perspectives that we bring to this work, that call us to do this work, and that we should share that in some meaningful way with our students, and that in sharing it, we support them in taking a strength-based approach to their own lives and identities. So I think do what makes sense to you. I know for me, I have a sick amount of costumes in the home. I have a lot of headgear. I have at least 30 unicorn horns in a variety of colors to match a variety of outfits. I have a lot of headsets. I like to use costume, and I like to I joke with my students, and I keep it real with them. The last video I did for my juniors yesterday, I'm like, hi, this is Mr. Coleman reporting live from, well, my home. I like to add in like a little news anchory bit to it. And then I'd like to talk to them as I would talk to anyone that I respect and support. Like, I can understand why this is so difficult. I can understand that this is a difficult time for you. So how are you doing the next right thing? How are you taking time for yourself? How are you engaged with your self-care? And I think this again, you have to think about your students' attention span and how they know and understand you and what makes sense coming from you. But I think leveling with them and being as authentic and clear and empathetic as I can, I think that's more important than fun, to be honest. But I think there's a lot of fun that can be had. Think about what's fun for you, what would be fun for you to share, and then that should guide in some capacity how you implement your programming.
I could not agree more, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Students, particularly Gen Z, they are very sensitive to someone who is trying to be something that they're not. For them, the absolute number one thing is authenticity. So be your real self. And if you're like me, my real self, it doesn't have a funny bone, unfortunately. I just totally missed that in the, genetic lottery. I'm totally academic and data-based, and if I were trying to be funny, it would come off as very odd, right? But try to be engaging, but be your authentic self. The other thing I would ask of all of you is, this doesn't need to be said because all of you know it, students are incredibly anxious right now. They're scared they might catch the virus. They're scared their parents might catch the virus, or a grandmother or somebody that they love. But they also, they're not immune to the news, and they're hearing all of this, chatter about the next great recession could be coming, or depression. And so, will mom and dad have a job? These are very, very real issues to them. Or maybe mom and dad, or, grandmother or sibling, whatever, had a job, but it was in a service industry that just has been completely eliminated. Now what? I mean, it's intense anxiety. So what I would ask of you is to help others in your building, your colleagues in your school, send them a little pointer sheet telling them about reflective listening, what reflective listening is, as well as some pointers on culturally responsive communication. Because even though you are all experts in this, not everyone in your building is, and they might need a little help from you.
I love that. I love that counselor as leader and support within the school community with teachers and staff, in addition to students and parents and guardians. I love that so much. One, and the culture responsive piece. Yes, yes, I love that.
Unfortunately, I see this too often in the schools I work with. The counselors have it down, but not necessarily everyone else, and that can create some problems. So, all right, that is.
We can all stand to learn and grow.
Yeah. So we have 4 minutes left. Do we have any other questions? Go ahead and type them in the box. Lots of thank yous and kudos to you, Brian, coming in. Here's another question. Do you mind sharing one of your videos?
I assumed that question would come up. No, no, not at all. I'm silly. I, as you can probably guess, hearing how I speak or seeing any of the content I put out, I'm silly. But yeah, I'm happy to share out a video. I just preface that with like, a lot of the language I'll be using in my video is very specific to my school community and what we're working on at this stage. But yeah, for sure, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much. And we're just getting lots of comments now.
Okay.
That are just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Brian, for being who you are, for your love, energy, and your commitment to the profession, and for the passion that you have for school counseling and supporting your students. One last
You're so sweet. Thank you.
One last question. Will the content be shared through email or another format? So I am going to send all of you a follow-up email that has a link to where this webinar and supporting materials are going to be housed. I am not going to put everything up on the website all at once. As it comes in from Brian, bit by bit, I'm going to start populating it. The first thing that will go up will be a link to the recording. So you can at least get that. The other thing that you will get in the email is information on attending next week's webinar that will cover a lot of these same issues, but we'll probably take it a step further, because you know how quickly time changes, right? Like, 2 days ago we were all safe and it was only, impacting grandmothers, and now they're saying, no, that's changed, don't leave your house. It's just the speed at which we are learning things and reacting to all of this, it just changes by the second. So in addition, that email will have a link to next week's webinar. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you. I truly mean this. From the bottom of my heart, I am your absolute biggest fan. I cannot thank all of you enough for everything that you so tirelessly do for your students 24/7, day in, day out. And I would also, ditto what Brian said about self-care. That's the number one thing I see with counselors, is they give so much of themselves to others that they forget to leave time to take care of themselves. So make sure that you're doing that as well. So I just got someone said, I'm just joining. How do I get my email to you so that I may receive this information? That is an excellent question. And really quickly, if I can figure this out, I will put up an email. Let's see. Goodness. Okay, wait, I have to close. I'm sorry. So first I have to close this and then I can open up my email. So if you look right here on my screen, I'm going to type it out for you. There is my email, and this is my organization's website. And I'm going to really quickly take you all to that website so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's go I'm sorry, I'm a little slow computer user here. So if you go to sreb.org, okay, you will see programs and services. I would also call attention to all of you on this call to look into our training program for school counselors in the area of post-secondary planning and success for students. So go to Go Alliance Academy if you're interested in the PD aspect of this. Go Alliance is the overall program. If you go to sreb.org/go-alliance and you come down underneath Go Alliance, you'll see workshops and webinars. And here is where I'm going to start. I'm going to post the recording from today as well as the slides. And then as resources come in from Brian, I will add them to the page right here. Okay. Any last questions before we get off? I see it is 12:30. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you 1,000 times over, Brian, for your time and energy and doing such a phenomenal job preparing all of this for us today.
Happy to do it. Thank you for making this happen.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.